So, Fritz Leiber is a weird one. He was a poet and an actor, as well as an author, with a long and storied career, and he's considered one of the fathers of the sword and sorcery genre. Recently, I've read some of his Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stories, and I'd like to say he lives up to the hype for the most part. His writing, I was immediately blown away with, since he writes in this very intelligent, technical style, very thoughtful, and you can tell how smart he was just by reading some of his works. His fantasy stories are very, very strange, and the fictional world of Newhon that he created is something weird and bizarre and full to bursting with these standout characters and locations. Uh, and of course, his fantasy stories revolve around the wandering skald Fafhrd and the former magician's apprentice known as the Grey Mouser. I rooted around in my father's library and found this wonderful Ilmetan Lankmar collection detailing a large number of the early adventures of these two characters in and around the titular city. This mysterious city, sort of at the heart of the eerie, almost magical, Lovecraftian world Leiber has created. The story spends a lot of time on the city, this twisted city of Lankmar with its mists and thieves' guilds and shady taverns, and it spends a lot of time on the weird ass characters that live there. It's almost as wondrous and amazing as it is sometimes confusing and confounding, with magic and creatures that seem to do whatever they want, whenever they want, regardless of who it helps or hinders at the time. Uh, okay, now to get myself in a bit of hot water, because I've been wrestling with this thought for a while now, and I want to say that I kind of prefer Fafhrd and the Mouser as main characters than maybe even Conan the Cimmerian or some of the other heroes of the kind of classic pulp sword and sorcery era. At least I like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser better than young Conan the Cimmerian, who was very fond of making trouble for himself. Which is not to say that Fafhrd and the Mouser don't get themselves into all kinds of trouble, but I'm just always very interested in what those two have to say and what they plan on doing, because they think a lot about every little thing. They're both very clever, very smart. They work out these elaborate schemes that range from mind bogglingly brilliant and inspired to bat crap crazy. They're definitely depicted in a more anti-heroish light, even than even someone like Conan. I want to say, I don't think Mr. Leiber is trying to tell us to be like either of these two, or at least not entirely like them. These slightly drunken, bumbling, roguish rapscallions that they are. Uh, we're just meant to be entertained by them, and perhaps to learn something from their less than wise actions. Fafhrd is this tall warrior, fond of dramatic sing-song prose and fits of laughter. He is incredibly strong and smart. He's able to outmatch almost anyone in a fight, but he doesn't do well when outnumbered or in any particular magical conundrum. But he talks like a romantic, and he's not especially slow or stupid. He's just a northerner unused to the customs and the magic of the South, right? He makes for a great combatant, and he's intelligent when he needs to be, though kind of young and naive at times, at least when he starts out. The Grey Mouser, on the other hand, is small and cynical. Leiber describes him as looking almost like a child, swathed in these gray robes and cloaks, and swaggering around as if he owns the place. Uh, his tutor in the magical arts was murdered, and as a result, the Mouser develops this very dark, self-centered attitude toward almost everything around him, very interested in protecting himself and those close to him. While Fafhrd is mostly brawn with some brains, the Mouser is mostly brains with a bit of brawn. He is quick, he's a thief and a rogue, and he fights with a dagger and a short sword, and he's able to take on enemies many times his size. He's super intelligent and makes up for his friend's lack of magical knowledge with some incredible intuition, matched only by his wanderlust, and he's very fond of drink. That's a problem that both of them have, but it does hamper their endeavors many times. Uh, and I think you'll have seen these characters before, even if you know nothing of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. You've seen the big fighter and the small, short rogue with the incredible mind. Uh, and it was kind of Leiber who invented that trope, or at least the trope we know it as in the modern day. Uh, but as with Conan, who oftentimes gets depicted as the big dumb warrior, right? Who talks like a caveman for some reason. The Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser lookalikes uh, are just kind of caricatures of the otherwise impressive, intelligent, multidimensional characters that Fritz Leiber has shown us. Arguably, they're some of the more fascinating characters in sword and sorcery history. The Mouser is not just mean and cynical, nor is he incapable in a fight. He has remarkable amounts of kindness in him, especially for those as unfortunate, or more so than himself, right? And Fafhrd is smart. Fafhrd is smart. He's a poet, not much of a traditional scholar per se, but he's far from a big dumb brute, right? And it's kind of a shame, in my opinion, that the world of Newhon, I think, sometimes fails to accommodate the brilliance of its characters. At least not quite as well as it should. Uh, I've found in my reading that the duo is incredibly compelling, uh, even as some of the stranger stories failed to catch my interest. There is one story about a tower in the forest that, spoiler alert, it turns out to be this living thing, and it sort of moves like jelly, uh, and it will like bend over and crush people that get too close. And it's like floors and levels like squash people on the inside. It's very weird, and uh, I like the story well enough, but I'd rather Fafhrd and the Mouser uh, were in a less bizarre situation, so I can focus more on their interactions and on their slow but noticeable character development. I know I've only started their I've only seen the start of their journey, but it seems they're willing and able to change, to grow, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I love a dynamic character. Uh, and there is some weird stuff that happens throughout the stories that I love. Don't get me wrong. They have these wizards who advise them from time to time, and sometimes sort of hinder them. Uh, one being Ningubble of the Seven Eyes, uh, and the other being Shielba of the Eyeless Face. The one, Ningubble, uh, happens to have these seven glowing eyes in an otherwise black hood, funny enough, while the other has only the hood. You can't see Shielba's face. Uh, I guess looks a little like a Nazgul. Ningable talks a lot. He's fond of riddles, while Shielba is more to the point. They're always sending the duo on these ludicrous missions that don't make much sense, like stealing the Mask of Death or attacking this Bazaar of the Bizarre, run by these otherworldly soul-stealing hooligans. Uh, I think my favorite story, perhaps, out of this Ilmet and Lankmar that I have here, would have to be, I want to say it's Thieves' House, uh, in which we encounter some crazy conspiracies going on, and Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser run afoul of Lankmar's Thieves Guild yet again. That's sort of a trend. Uh, and they wind up stealing a magical ancient skull with rubies for eyes. Uh, and it turns out to be alive, this skull. He's like a long lost founder of the Thieves Guild, this powerful quasi immortal being that is almost godlike and definitely a lich. Uh, and the story's got all these twists and turns where Fafhrd and the Mouser are framed for a murder that the skull actually committed, and there's secret passages, a bunch of sneaking around, hiding from some people and backstabbing others. It ends with a whole host of the dead old Thieves Guild gods of Lankmar rocking up and telling the guild to get in line. It's really quite amazing. They just reform their own cult basically overnight. Uh, and I think a story like that, with these ancient, almost Lovecraftian gods that Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser have to deal with, it actually works really well. I was surprised. Uh, and it sort of plays off their established characters. There's a lot of side characters who kind of deal with what they've got going on. It's very entertaining, and who knows, right? Maybe I'll read some other stories uh, in which the duo is more mature, and maybe there will be more stories like Thieves' House with kooky liches and monsters and all sorts. I'm certainly not against reading more. I know Leiber has some great works uh, set in the world of Newhon and otherwise that I would love to read. I was certainly impressed by his writing, and I'll think fondly of my time reading Ilmet and Lankmar. That's for darn sure. Uh, yeah, Fritz Leiber. Uh, two thumbs up. Yeah, yep, bye.